Hey, everybody. It's that time of year again that we're about to start core aeration and seeding services for customers. We need to review a few issues so everybody's on the same page regarding core aeration, as well as some important things regarding seeding, what it will do, what it won't do, how we do it, so that we're all on the same page, especially when talking to customers. So a few things to talk about by way of getting ready to address some of those issues. The first thing we need to make sure is that everybody's on the same page regarding thatch, what it is, and what we do here at Seascape about it, and what we do not do about it. First of all, thatch is this layer of light brown, dead and dying leaves, shoots, and roots that lives between the green grass up above and the soil shown here in the picture as darker brown, the soil down below. As many of you know, a little bit of thatch isn't going to do any harm. Half an inch of thatch or less is actually probably desirable and beneficial in a lawn because it's going to help to soften the lawn a little bit. It's going to make soil compaction much less of a problem. However, when thatch gets to be thicker, in general, when it gets to be an inch or so deep, thatch can become quite detrimental to a lawn for a number of reasons. First and foremost is thatch is going to restrict water infiltration. When it dries out, especially in a summer like we have this year, it becomes what's referred to as hydrophobic, meaning it resists wetting. So when you've got a situation such as we've had this year with a number of very quick but heavy downpours, those downpours really, because they're so quick, will basically just run off and they will not infiltrate down through the thatch. So it's really not going to help the drought situation or going to help at all the grass recovering from the drought. The second thing to be aware of is when thatch gets thicker than a half an inch and begins to approach an inch, it is going to harbor a lot of insects and diseases that can be detrimental to the lawn. We are trying, there we go. Okay, so there's two approaches to taking care of thatch. The first approach is what's referred to as dethatching, what you see here with the red machine on the left-hand side of the screen. Dethatching is nothing more than using a power rake to run back and forth over the lawn, which, using a number of mechanical blades underneath spinning very rapidly, is going to pull the thatch up to the surface. The alternative method of removing thatch is using a core aerator, which is the typical way that we would prefer to do thatch reduction in lawns, which I'll explain more in just a moment. The ride-on aerator that you see here on the left, or excuse me, on the right, is actually one of our older core aerators. This particular one has got a fertilizer hopper mounted to the front of it. At one time, we thought we were going to get fancy and we'd be able to core aerate and fertilize at the same time, but we've since realized that was actually asking a little too much of the machine as well as the operator. The aerator, though, that's functioning here, you can see on the bottom of the aerator, these are the tines that are spinning that will be pulling the cores up and out of the turf. Back, though, for just a moment to dethatching. Dethatching can take place using, such as what we saw here a moment ago, with a dethatcher. However, dethatching, particularly in a small lawn, can be done simply with a heavy metal garden rake. It's laborious, it's tough on the raker, but a lot of people will remove thatch by hand if their lawn is small. If anything, in larger lawns, such as what's pictured here on the right, it would be impossible to dethatch using a hand rake. And so this picture demonstrates what a lawn would look like after dethatching with a power rake. and you can see all of the debris left on the surface of the grass. So dethatching is nothing more than the mechanical removal of the thatch. If a lawn has got a very thick thatch layer, more than an inch or greater, it's going to be beneficial in extreme cases. However, there are some very real disadvantages to dethatching, which are shown here. First and foremost, the reason we do not recommend dethatching, except in extreme cases, is the amount of lawn damage that's going to occur. As the thatch is being pulled out, okay, and being pulled up to the surface, those mechanical blades on the bottom of the dethatcher or the power rake are pulling up the good grass as well as the thatch. So you are removing a considerable amount of good grass at the same time you are removing the thatch. Because of that, the turf, the lawn is opened up, the soil is exposed. It's going to therefore encourage and allow weeds and crabgrass to germinate, particularly if people are attempting to dethatch in the spring. It's time consuming, it is expensive, and most notably, particularly as shown here in the photograph on the right, it pulls up a tremendous amount of dead material, thatch, as well as good grass. That all then has to be removed, and that's laborious, it's expensive. That picture, that lawn, even though it wasn't that large, that amount of thatch would easily pick up or fill up a small dump truck. So dethatching can be expensive, can be time consuming, and removing the debris is always going to be a challenge. What we would prefer to do at Seascape, and we do aerate several thousands of lawns annually. Sometimes we aerate lawns in conjunction with seeding, and sometimes we aerate lawns just for other benefits of aeration other than thatch removal. So in the picture on the left-hand side of the screen, you can see where the aerator, as these tines, these red tines are spinning, you can see at the bottom of the tine is closed. And as these tines get pushed down into the soil, they're going to pull out these plugs of soil, which are probably the size of your index finger. And depending upon the relative amount of soil moisture, these plugs can be anywhere from half an inch long to as long as 2 inches. The more soil moisture in general, the better the machine is going to do at pulling out long plugs. Shown over on the right-hand side of the screen, okay, note first of all that we do recommend customers leave plugs on the surface. We have had customers who are known to go out and rake up all the plugs, which is not what we want to happen. What we want to happen is to leave the soil on the surface of the lawn. Over time, and generally within 10 days to 2 weeks, these soil plugs are going to dry out and they're going to break down, and the thatch that we have left on the surface of the lawn then filters down on top of the thatch. And over time, the microorganisms that are in the soil will go to work and will begin to degrade the thatch layer. Not going to happen overnight. However, if somebody is regularly thatching their lawn, in general, thatch should not become a lawn with regular core aeration taking place. Now, we've talked about core aeration and its benefits in terms of removing thatch, and that indeed is one of the primary benefits of core aeration. However, core aeration has a number of other benefits beyond thatch removal that are equally important. When we, as shown here in this picture diagram, when we remove a core of soil and leave a hole open, that allows for the introduction of air, water, and nutrients into the soil. So just demonstrating that core aeration, even without a thatch problem, okay, core aeration is going to be beneficial to a lawn. The root system of turf, or not just any turf, or any plant, but of any plant material, the root system requires air and water and nutrients. And core aeration is just a way to encourage or enhance the movement of air and water and nutrients into the soil. As a result, these holes that are left after a core aeration, okay, not only are they breaking down the thatch, but these core aeration holes greatly enhance rooting of the turf. The core aeration hole that is left open will very rapidly fill up with new roots that are stimulated as a result of cutting off the older roots when the core aeration plug is pulled. Most people would, I think, agree. Most lawn technicians who have been here for more than just a couple of years would agree that regular core aeration does improve the quality of a lawn. It helps it to thicken up. It helps it to fill in bare spaces, and overall is very beneficial to the lawn. Regular core aeration, if somebody asks the question, how often should I core aerate? We would like to see people core aerate once every other year as a minimum. Certainly annual core aeration would be beneficial, but we would like to see aeration take place once every other year as a minimum. Just another picture of core aeration plugs sitting on the surface of the soil. You can see here they're beginning to break up, particularly as mowers and foot traffic walks across the lawn. Oftentimes, again, customers will try to remove the plugs, just as a reminder that if a customer asks the question, we just want them to leave the plugs in place. So to summarize then, the benefits of aeration versus dethatching. Not only are we going to be removing or minimizing the development of thatch, but we are going to be, when we core aerate, introducing air, water, and nutrients into the soil profile, something that core aeration, something that power raking or dethatching will not do. At the same time, aeration, unlike dethatching, is going to improve rooting. And as a result of that, the lawn is going to have an improved ability to resist drought. It's going to have an improved level of nutrient uptake. And because of all of those benefits, lawn density is going to improve. So that pretty much talks about or summarizes the benefits of aeration. And you should now have a better understanding of why we do not recommend people dethatch the lawn except in very extreme cases. Now, core aeration, we at Seascape use core aeration at the same time that we are seeding a lawn. I'm not going to make any of you with this short presentation seeding experts. However, I want to take just a moment and give you a little bit of an introduction in terms of seeding and how we go about it and why we will utilize core aeration at the same time that we are seeding a lawn. So I want to talk about why we seed as opposed to not sod, why we would prefer, and most customers would prefer, that we seed. We're going to talk a little bit about the type of seed that we use, and finally seed timing, why we generally recommend seeding in the fall and not so much in the spring. Seed generally that we use here at Seascape, and in general that most people use, is going to consist of a mixture of several different types of grasses. A typical turf seed mixture typically will consist of 3 different kinds of grasses. It's a mixture of Kentucky bluegrass, perennial ryegrass, and fine fescue. This particular mixture, you can see, is 50% Kentucky bluegrass, 25% perennial rye, and 25% fine fescue. Those percentages will change depending upon what you're trying to accomplish and the site where you are seeding and what kind of results you're going to look for. Kentucky bluegrass is included in most turf seed mixtures in the Northeast because of its advantages, primarily that it will fill in bare areas and it's got to tolerate sun. Kentucky bluegrass is by far the most widely used grass in the Northeast. We say it will fill in bare areas because Kentucky bluegrass does contain the ability to develop or produce underground shoots called rhizomes, which, provided you're a little bit patient, will fill in bare areas in a lawn without any additional seeding. If you've got a bare area in the lawn, for example, the size of a softball or even a little bit larger, Kentucky bluegrass has got the ability to fill that area in all by itself. Where if your lawn were exclusively ryegrass or fine fescue, it would not have the ability to fill in those areas without seeding. Mention again that Kentucky bluegrass is going to tolerate sun better than all of the other grasses that we're going to talk about. Perennial ryegrass generally is included in turf seed mixtures in the Northeast for the main advantage of it's going to germinate very quickly. After seeding, it's got to help to stabilize the soil very quickly to make it less subjected to runoff if there's heavy rain or overwatering after seeding. And most importantly, it's going to, because it germinates very quickly, it's going to make the customer happy and satisfy the customer that the seeding is going to be a success. When we talk about perennial ryegrass germinating quickly, to put that in perspective, perennial ryegrass, provided it's watered, will generally begin to germinate and become apparent to the customer within about 5 days. If you seeded a lawn exclusively to Kentucky bluegrass, it's going to take at least 2 weeks in order for it to begin to germinate and become visible to the homeowner. So perennial ryegrass, because of the rapid germination, we ensure the customers sooner as opposed to later got to be happy with the seeding job that we are doing. Most turf seed mixtures also contain at least some fine fescue or red fescue. The reason for that is fine fescue's got the ability to tolerate shade, as well as it requires less fertilizer over time than does Kentucky bluegrass or perennial ryegrass. When we say fine fescue's got to tolerate some shade, if we're going to seed an area that we know is going to be very heavily shaded, we would probably include more than the 25% fine fescue that is shown in this particular typical seed mixture. Also, if we were seeding a lawn that we knew was going to receive very little fertilizer over time, we would want to make sure that there was plenty of fine fescue in the mix as well. So one advantage to using a mixture of 3 different types of grass is a mixture has got to adapt to the conditions and it's got to evolve as conditions change. There's 3 different examples here. For the first example, let's suppose you've got a lawn that has got some newly planted trees in it, and over time those trees are going to mature and they're going to create more shade. What you would find if you actually determine how much grass seed was going to, or how much grass was going to be in that lawn over time, it would tend to transition into the fescues because the fescues are more adapted or better adapted to the shade. In the second example, if you've got a lawn where more fertilizer is applied, Kentucky bluegrass and ryegrass are going to tend to predominate. So if it, for example, is a lawn that's pretty much in the full shade, and we're applying a healthy amount of fertilizer, Kentucky bluegrass and ryegrass will predominate, and most of the fescue is going to fade away. Likewise, in the third example, if less fertilizer is applied to a lawn, the fescues are going to predominate, and the Kentucky bluegrass and ryegrass will predominate. At Seascape, we use 2 different mixtures when we seed a lawn. We have available to the seeding crews both a grass seed mixture for sunny areas versus a grass seed mixture for shady areas. Probably 75% of the grass seed that we use is sunny area grass seed. 25% is grass seed for shady areas. You can see here the example on the right for the center areas. This is the exact same percentage that we were showing you in the previous slide on a typical grass seed mixture. 50% Kentucky bluegrass, 25% rye, 25% fine fescue. The grass seed mixture for shady areas, for example, we've got a lot of trees or the north side of the house, would tend to put much more fine fescue into it and far less Kentucky bluegrass into it. And so it's typical in a shady area that you would use 60% fine fescue, 30% rye, and only 10% Kentucky bluegrass. That fine fescue mixture is going to perform much better in the shaded area than the sunny area turf seed mixture. Seeding timing. We're going into fall, and fall is when I think most of you know we do the vast majority of our seeding. Why do we generally recommend that seeding takes place in the fall and not in the spring? Let's talk about the disadvantages of spring seeding. A lot of people do it. It can be successful, but it is a challenge. It's a challenge for several different reasons. First of all, the soil remains cold in the spring right up until we hit warm weather in June or July. Cold soil is going to mean slow germination. Slow germination is going to mean less customer satisfaction and more watering that is going to have to be required because the grass germinates so slow. In general, when we seed in the spring also, we have a lot of weed seed and weed seed germinating right along with the grass. So you've got more of a problem with weeds, broadleaf weeds, as well as crabgrass. Also in the spring, because grass seed germinates slowly, there is more of a watering requirement. More watering is going to be needed from a spring as opposed to a fall seeding. And finally, what you don't want to do is you don't want to take an immature seeding, grass that is recently germinated, and then subject it to a hot summer. Many seedings that are done in the spring that start off in the spring looking pretty good, as soon as we get into the hot summer, because the seeding is not fully established or mature, many of those seedings will succumb and will thin out throughout the summer months. Fall then is really when we want to be seeding, okay? Fall has got the advantages, first and foremost, of warm soil. Soil temperatures generally in September, October remain quite warm. They remain in the high 60s and 70s, and that soil is going to ensure the grass seed is going to germinate much more rapidly. You typically have fewer weeds and crabgrass germinating alongside the grass seed in the fall. Less watering is required because the grass seed does germinate more rapidly, and also because we typically have more regular rainfall in the fall than we do in the spring. Finally, the immature grass seed that's germinating and trying to get itself established in the fall will have an additional 2 to 3 months before that lawn goes into the hot summer months when it's going to begin to struggle. So it's got to go into the hot summer months as a more mature lawn than if you would seed it in the spring. Finally, just wanted to note for everybody's benefit, some of the reasons that customers might choose to seed versus sod, and why we generally at Seascape are going to be seeding. We do very few sod jobs. We really discourage sod jobs, and we do not get involved in sodding brand new lawns. Sod, however, does have the main advantage of being instant. You can go off to work in the morning and come home at the end of the day and have a brand new, beautiful looking lawn. However, it tends to be very expensive. Sodding can be up to 10 times the expense of seeding a lawn. Because most sod is grown from exclusively Kentucky bluegrass, okay, it's got to perform better in the sun. Remember, the Kentucky bluegrass likes full sun, doesn't like shade. So Kentucky bluegrass generally is what comprises sod. And because it's Kentucky bluegrass, it wants full sun. it is going to require more fertilizer and more water than a lawn which is seeded to a mixture containing some fine fescues, which we know don't demand as much fertilizer or water. Seeding, on the other hand, has got the disadvantage that it's got to take up to a year to be fully established. It can be fully established in less time than that if weather cooperates and if the homeowner is doing a faithful job in terms of watering. It is going to cost far less money. We do have the ability to use shade-tolerant grasses, which we don't have with sod, and we do have the flexibility with different grass types. We have the flexibility to use seed mixtures that will require less fertilizer and water and be more shade tolerant. So that hopefully will give you the information that you need, particularly when talking to customers in regards to coaeration, why we recommend it in the fall, and why we utilize coaeration in conjunction with seeding. Haven't made any of you experts on seeding. The seeding crews will get a lot more information than this as we kick off the seeding season, and we need to bring them up to speed on how to properly coarate a lawn in order for the coaeration in conjunction to work. That is it. We're all set, guys. Thank you.